Hello, Andre Beely with you, and this is the premiere of my new story on the Alien Relatives channel. Enjoy! Ritochka, just don't make a fuss like you usually do. Pavlusha paid off my bills with your savings. The boy finally realized that his mother's nervous system is more important than your new windowsills. The mother-in-law's voice, coming from the smartphone speaker, was so saturated with sugary smugness that it could have been used to glaze donuts. Margarita froze over the table. Room 320 of the district clinic smelled of bleach, old paper, and mints. There were no patients yet. The electronic scheduling system froze once again, granting a 20-minute window of relative peace. Peace that had just been shattered. What savings, Tamara Ilyinishna? Margarita spoke evenly, although inside her stomach twisted into a tight, cold knot. Well, the same ones that cost $72,000 for your utilities and the pipes in the bathroom. Oh, don't make a big deal, Rita. I've got late fees. They threatened to cut off the power. I invested in the marathon of desires. I was a little over budget in the spring. Pasha just did a manly thing. That's it, I'm too busy. I have yoga for my joints via Skype. Short beeps hit my ears. Margarita slowly placed the phone on the table. The screen went dark. The 72,000 rubles were in the nightstand under the apartment deeds. Her apartment, inherited from her grandmother, the apartment where Pavel had lived for the last 4 years, bringing into his daily life nothing but philosophical reflections on self-discovery and dirty mugs near the computer. It was Margarita's quarterly bonus. The money was intended to pay off the accumulated utility bills and urgently replace the pipes that howled at night with the voices of sinners. This morning, Margarita pulled out a wad of bills and placed it on the kitchen table. Posh, will you go to the bank? I have an office until this evening. Pay the bills. Transfer the rest to the plumber's card. I sent him the number. She told him over breakfast. Her husband nodded, still glued to his smartphone, munching on cold toast with the air of a lord entrusted with stable affairs. There was a cautious knock on the office door. Margarita Viktorovna, may I come in? A patient, a meek man with chronic depression and the conviction that all the doctors on the planet had banded together to hide cheap pills from him, poked his head through the crack. Come in, Arkady Borisovich, she said in an even, well-controlled voice. The next 4 hours turned into a surreal kaleidoscope. Margarita measured blood pressure, tapped people's backs, listened to complaints of stabbing pain in their sides, and simultaneously made a plan. She knew about Tamara Ilyinishna's debts. Her mother-in-law was a woman of epic proportions. She didn't accept meters. She considered paying for major repairs a personal insult. But she regularly bought copper blood pressure bracelets and transferred substantial sums to tarot readers online. Pavel always made excuses for his mother. She was elderly, searching for herself, needing attention. He muttered every time Tamara Ilyinishna pulled another financial stunt. At midday that evening, her shift ended. Margarita returned her keys to the receptionist, threw on her coat, and went outside. An icy wind blew a handful of stinging snow into her face, as if trying to bring her to her senses. But she was already completely sober. The drive home took 40 minutes. At the supermarket near her home, she bought a pack of 120-liter heavy-duty construction bags. The cashier eyed the roll of green plastic with mild suspicion, but said nothing. The apartment greeted her with dim light and the smell of microwave dumplings. Pavel wasn't there yet. Apparently, after his heroic visit to the bank, where he'd paid his mother's bills, he'd decided to take a stroll, feeling like the savior of the universe. Margarita went into the bedroom and opened the closet. Her gaze slid over the shelves. There were Pavel's icons. There was his collection of band T-shirts, half of which he'd never listened to. On the floor was a fishing rod he'd bought 3 years ago and never taken out of its case. She unwrapped the first construction bag. The green plastic rustled dryly, smoothing out its sides. Margarita worked methodically and quickly. She didn't rip things, didn't cut them with scissors, didn't throw them out the window. Cheap melodrama effects didn't interest her. She simply sorted. The first bag contained clothes, the second, shoes, shaving kit, 2 bottles of eau de cologne, and a bath towel. The third bag contained the most important items: a gaming keyboard with glowing keys, a mouse pad, and that very fishing rod that stuck out of the bag's mouth like the antenna of a broken lunar rover. The process of packing up someone else's life took exactly 35 minutes. 3 pot-bellied green bags lined up in the hallway near the front door. They resembled 3 fat trolls guarding the exit. Margarita washed her hands, put the kettle on the stove, and sat down at the kitchen table. Cars hummed outside. The wall clock counted off the seconds with metronome-like volume. Click. The key turned in the lock. The door swung open, its hinges creaking. Ritosik, I'm home. Pavel's voice was cheerful, with a slightly false note, the kind used by schoolchildren who've earned a bad grade and are trying to talk their parents into it. And I bought some eclairs, your favorite, with custard. He hesitated. Stepping over the threshold, the hallway was crowded. 3 green bags took up almost all the available space. What's this? We're starting renovations. Pavel shifted awkwardly on the rug, clutching a plastic box of pastries to his chest. His gaze darted to the kitchen, where Margarita was calmly stirring her tea with a spoon. No, she said dryly. Come on in, don't stand in the draft. Pavel squeezed sideways into the kitchen like a crab and placed the eclairs on the table. His face began to take on a slight tint of raw dough. Reed, what are you doing? Did something happen at work? The head doctor was nagging him again. Margarita sipped her tea and looked at her husband over the cup. A 34-year-old man with a slight nervous demeanor, wearing fashionable sneakers bought with her New Year's bonus. A perpetually promising worker who had been scraping by with odd computer setup jobs for the past 8 months, spending most of his time leveling up his elf. Tamara Ilyinishna called in an online game to thank him. Pavel stopped breathing. His shoulders instantly slumped, pulling his head in like a frightened turtle. "Oh, Mom, yes, Reed, listen, I wanted to tell you, it's just, you see, the situation was critical. The management company was threatening to sue. Her blood pressure was fluctuating. I couldn't abandon my mother to her fate. It's just money, Reed. We'll make more." The woman carefully placed the spoon on the saucer. He clacked his china, cutting off any escape routes. "Who is this?" "We. You've brought 19,000 rubles into the house over the last 6 months. Of that, that's for the video card upgrade. Why are you counting right away? We're a family, we share a budget." Pavel was starting to get irritated. "Why do you always measure everything in bills? You were supposed to pay the utilities for our apartment, not your mother's. So now go live with her." Her voice pounded the kitchen walls, causing the window panes to rattle. Pavel recoiled as if he'd been slapped in the face with a wet towel. "Are you kicking me out because of money? You're so materialistic. You simply don't understand what a family connection is." He tried to puff out his cheeks and look menacing. But with the box of clearamizers in the background, it looked incredibly ridiculous. "Your family connections are packed in green bags." Margarita pointed her finger into the hallway. "The gaming mouse is in the third one. Don't crush it when you drag it. Put the keys on the nightstand, and you're free to go. Yes, you'll come running to apologize." Pavel proudly raised his head, turned on his heel, and rushed into the hallway. What followed took on a comical quality. His proud departure was greatly complicated by the size of his luggage. Pavel tried to grab 3 bags at once, but the fishing rod treacherously hit him in the back of the head, and the bag of clothes slipped from his hands. In the end, he dragged his belongings out into the stairwell in 3 stages, cursing quietly under his breath. Putting his keys on the shoe rack, he cast a final withering glance at his wife. "You're destroying a family over papers. Mom was right about you. You're callous." "Close the door tighter, it's drafty," Margarita replied indifferently and went into the kitchen to finish her tea. She was alone. The silence in the apartment was thick, calming. No one clicked on the keyboard, no one sighed, loudly demonstrating their fatigue from the arduous process of lying on the couch. Margarita went to the sink and washed a cup. She understood perfectly well that this was not the end. People like Pavel and his mother never walk off into the sunset silently. They return to put on a concert by request. And exactly 2 hours passed. The wall clock showed 9 p.m. A muffled noise was heard on the stairwell behind the door. The jingle of keys that Pavel no longer had, the tugging of the handle, then an insistent pulsating bell. Someone was pressing the button as if the fate of humanity depended on it. Margarita calmly stood up, straightened her house cardigan, and went to the door. She did not look through the peephole. She simply swung open Nastasia's door. The scene in the entryway resembled a rehearsal at a provincial theater before a premiere. Pavel stood slightly behind his mother, shifting from foot to foot. All 3 green bags were piled right there by the wall, like barricades. Tamara Ilyinishna loomed ahead, like an icebreaker. She wore a bright red beret, slanted to the side, either from anger or from walking quickly. Under her arm, the mother-in-law clutched a folder with some receipts. So then, the mother-in-law began, stepping forward with the volume of a train whistle. "What are you doing, girl? Why did you throw my son out into the cold at night? What kind of tyranny is this?" The door of the neighboring apartment creaked softly. Boris, a strong man of about 60, poked his nose through the resulting gap. A fat pug puffed on the floor next to him. Boris, he loved a free show and never missed a stairwell showdown. Margarita didn't even flinch. "Have you seen the time, Tamara Ilyinishna? People are relaxing. Turn down the decibels or the plaster will fall." "Don't shut me up." The mother-in-law shook the folder indignantly. The leopard print down jacket rustled. "The money is shared in the marriage. Pasha had every right to dispose of it as the head of the family. I am his mother. And who are you to throw him out with his things?" A tenant with arrogance. The head of the family, then. Margarita turned her cold, scanning gaze to Pavel. The head who has only bought 3 packs of dumplings and a toilet paper holder for the house in a year. "I'm looking for a promising project," Pavel said from behind his mother's back. "You can't just grab the first job that comes along." "That's exactly it," Tamara Ilyinishna picked up, getting heated up. "My son is not a loader to break his back. And you, Rita, should be providing for the rear, not counting pennies. I brought you the receipts. Look, I recently bought a course in proper breathing to open the chakras. And you know what? My chakras have cleared, and now wealth will come to our family. Pashenka will soon be rich, and you will bite your elbows." Neighbor Boris behind the door couldn't resist and snorted with laughter. The pug also sneezed, supporting his owner. Margarita slowly tore herself away from the doorframe. "Your chakras, Tamara Ilyinishna, cost me 72,000 rubles. Our utilities are not paid. The bathroom pipes are held on by a man's word of honor. You're always lying. You're just greedy. You hate me." Tamara Ilyinishna realized that logic wasn't working and turned on her signature move. The scenario had been rehearsed for years. Mother-in-law, theatrically, she clutched her chest. The leopard sleeve rose up to her throat. Her face twisted in a grimace of unbearable pain. "Oh, Pasha, hold me, my heart, my heart. She'll give me a heart attack, I'm out of breath." With these words, the woman began to slowly, demonstratively sink to the concrete floor of the stairwell, trying not to stain the hem of her down jacket. Pavel, screaming, rushed forward, supporting her by the elbow. "Look what you've done." "Call an ambulance," her husband screamed hysterically, trying to sit his mother down on the steps. His mother-in-law was breathing heavily, her eyes rolling back so that only the whites were visible. Pavel's neighbor's door swung open wider. "Help is needed." "Bring the first aid kit," the neighbor asked worriedly. Margarita took a step out of the apartment onto the stairwell. Her face remained completely stony. Her profession had left its mark. She couldn't stand panic. "Boris Sergeyevich, stay put," Anton commanded, brooking no argument. She approached her mother-in-law, who was sitting on the steps, and squatted down. Tamara Ilyinishna continued to wheeze and gasp for air, looking at her daughter-in-law from under half-closed eyelids. Margarita, with a sharp, professional movement, grabbed her mother-in-law's wrist, feeling for a pulse. She tried to pull her hand away, but the doctor's grip was stronger. Pulse 78, rhythmic, excellent volume. Margarita began commenting loudly for the entire entryway. "Oh, it's burning. It's radiating to my shoulder blade." Tamara Ilyinishna groaned, not giving up her position. Margarita ignored her wheezing. She pulled down her mother-in-law's lower eyelid, peering into the eye. The mucous membranes, pink capillaries, were normal. The skin was dry and warm. "You, Tamara Ilyinishna, if you were really having a heart attack, you'd be sitting here right now, pale as a moth, covered in a cold, sticky sweat, breathing shallowly. But you're yelling so loudly, my ears are ringing. Your breathing is deep, your diaphragm is working perfectly. The chakras have apparently really cleared out." Boris, in the background, openly laughed, covering his mouth with his fist. Pavel jumped up. "Are you kidding me? Are you a doctor or a sadist? She's sick." "She's sick because I didn't fall for this circus," Margarita snapped, straightening up. A diagnosis of sharp cunning. She crossed her arms over her chest and looked down at Tamara Ilyinishna. "Get up off the concrete, you'll catch a cold in your lower back. I won't treat you for free later." The mother-in-law realized the act had failed miserably. The neighbor's audience laughed. The daughter-in-law stood like a rock, and her son looked pitiful. The instant miraculous healing was not long in coming. Tamara stopped puffing. Her eyes returned to normal. She leaned on her son's knee and rose to her feet, shaking out her down jacket. Her face was streaked with rage. Snake in the Grass spat the mother-in-law, glaring at Margarita with hatred. "I don't want to set foot in this apartment again, and you're not worthy of my son. Pack your things, Pasha, we're leaving. We'll leave this mouse in its hole. Let it pine away over its pennies. And the things are already packed." Margarita politely gestured to 3 green bags along the wall. "You can take the head of the family and his fishing rods right now. Your energy channels are cleared. It will be easy to carry." Pavel looked from his mother to his wife. It seemed the full scale of the disaster had only just dawned on him. Living with his mother in a one-room apartment on the outskirts of town, with dried herbs strewn everywhere and the only food available was buckwheat on sale, wasn't part of his plans. "Reed, maybe we should talk?" "Well, we were sitting there just fine." He tried to take a step toward the door, switching on the beaten-up dog mode. We'd already talked for $72,000. The word limit had been reached. Margarita took a step back into the hallway. "Paying my bills remains on your conscience, Tamara Ilyinishna. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. I've picked up the keys. All the best. Good night, Boris Sergeyevich. And you too, Margarita Viktorovna. You gave her a good dressing down." The neighbor winked. "You all," Pavel yelped, finally losing control. Grabbing the nearest bag, he yanked it toward himself. The package burst, and underwear, socks, and collectible computer mice spilled out onto the dirty stairwell floor, tangled in wires. Tamara Ilyinishna clutched her head and began wailing in a high, pitiful tone, this time completely sincerely mourning the damage. Margarita didn't wait to watch the rest of the performance. She softly, without knocking, closed the front door, double-locked it, and clicked the inner latch. The hallway smelled of coffee and silence. The absence of strangers in the apartment felt like fresh air after a thunderstorm. She glanced at her shoes, which were long overdue for replacement. Never mind, I'll buy myself some the first time I save on pelmeni, she thought, smiling at her reflection in the mirror and going into the kitchen to finish the eclairs from the abandoned box. The custard was exceptionally delicious. Thank you for your attention. This was Andre Beely.